Well, that's a great question.
On 95.7 The Game.
Listen to this. Can I throw this at you? Listen to this.
Do it, yeah.
Ex-NFL player.
Yep.
Analyst for NFL Media, Fox Sports Radio, Fox Sports Digital, head coach, Granada Hills.
I used to live right by there.
But he doesn't know as much as mockdraft.com. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
The hell does he know on the River Islands guest line? Bucky Brooks is who I'm talking about, of course. And yes, you see him a lot on NFL Network, analyst for all things NFL, and joining us now here on Willard and Dibs. Hi, friend. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing much better than John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are doing in the Bay. I'm taking shots at them dudes at the presser.
Well,
that's unprecedented. Unbelievable.
You're next up, Bucky.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn my mic off, and I want to hear you torch that you-know-what. Let me hear it. No, don't you hold back. Let's go. Say it with your chest.
Oh, my gosh. Look, man, we're in a unique time. We got a lot of people have a lot of access, a lot of opinions out there floating. I would say now, more than ever, it's more challenging to be a coach, a leader, executive, kind of dealing with everything, because we're in a space where everyone feels like they can do your job. And because of the scrutiny, if you're not really strong and convicted in your own beliefs about team building, the outside noise can sway you. And if you begin to do what the outsiders do, you're going to end up being on the outside. So it'll be interesting to see how the Niners go forward with all of the conversation about how they drafted of late and all of the eyeballs that are certainly on them, despite what I would say has been a very successful run under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch.
Well, it's because they got lucky, Bucky. That's what people will tell you. You know, you got lucky with Brock Purdy, and you happen to just stagger into that. An honest question, though, Bucky, at what point can you look at a draft class and to start to make actual determinations about how they did?
So there are a few different things that you want to understand. First, I think everyone needs to understand the average NFL playing career for a player is only 3.5 years. So most players never make it to a second contract. That's not like success failure. That's just kind of what it is. Normally in the business, it takes 2 to 3 years to determine whether the class was successful or not. In a perfect world, you hit on your first and second round picks, because if you look at the Pro Bowl list, if you look at most rosters, they're comprised mostly of first and second rounders with some other guys kind of mixed in. After that, when we talk about the success that you have on day 3 picks, 4th round or later, honestly, man, there's a lot of luck involved in that, because if you felt so highly about them, you would have drafted them sooner. There was something that led you to take them later rather than earlier, whether it's character, whether it's medical, whether it's just kind of like scheme fit and those things. There are things that led you to take a guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round. And to be honest, when you talk about 6th and 7th round picks, they were really priority free agents that you wanted to have, so you drafted them as opposed to wait to the undrafted free agent market. So there's a lot of luck involved in all of this. That's why the best teams typically try and load up on the number of draft picks, and they just fire a bunch of bullets. And they hope that some of them hit, because there's a lot of happenstance that comes with guys being successful, despite the best coaching that the NFL coach is trying to do.
Okay, so Bucky, let me follow up on that then, because if you've got a team, and I know there are exceptions to this, but if you have a team that has essentially almost been more successful in the back half of the draft than they have in the front half of the draft, are you saying that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are largely just lucky?
I'm not saying it's lucky, because, see, what people always talk about, like during this time of year, they always talk about the player acquisition part, right? So we all want to judge because it's entertainment, right? It's entertainment, like, oh, the draft's happening, let's issue a grade, let's look at it, let's see what they got, yada, yada, yada. But after talent acquisition comes talent development. So once you get them into the building, what happens from there is largely on your ability to develop the player. Can you plug them into the right scheme? Can you put them in a position where they're successful? Do they put in the time to develop their own game? All of those things are factors. And then you have like the injury factor, like that none of us can control. So there are a lot of different things that happen after the player comes in the building that determine whether they're successful or not. And there's also some luck involved in that too.
So they draft De'Zhaun Stribling. Everyone's, it's a reach, and you could have gotten him later. Let's put that part of it aside. Do you think that the drafting of a wide receiver that high is at all an indictment on how they feel about Ricky Pearsall?
I mean, when you look at their wide receiver core, because I think it was a year or 2 years ago I came on there, y'all took me to task for talking about wide receivers and running routes after the Super Bowl. I talked about how they needed route runners and those things. I think a couple things. Ricky Pearsall, and I loved him when he was coming out of school. Unfortunately, he's just had a string of injuries that are not really his fault that have kept him from being on the field consistently. If you're the Niners and you're Kyle Shanahan and you're always having to play with the backups, the guys that you haven't counted on, what you want to do is you want to ensure that the stable that I have in that room are rock solid, that they can get it done. Now, you heard John Lynch kind of take a little side swipe at maybe Brandon Aiyuk and some of the previous guys, like when they acquired Mike Evans and Christian Kirk. They talked about, man, we wanted some men in the room. We basically wanted some pros. They also want, with Stribling, they want another playmaker to be able to do it. So think about it. Christian Kirk and Mike Evans are probably slated to start. You then have Ricky Pearsall. Well, if Ricky Pearsall is available, who's the next man up? It would be Stribling. They needed to hedge their bets with some insurance, but they also needed insurance at all of these spots, right? You needed a running back for Christian McCaffrey if he gets hurt, George Kittle, those things. So part of it is just them doing business, but a big part of it is like, hey, what if Ricky Pearsall isn't available to do what we want to do? We need to have some other guys in place that maybe can slide into that wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 role down the line. So that's what it was. But let me say this about Stribling, because there's a lot of consternation about this. I talked to 2 wide receiver coaches in the week leading up to the draft that Stribling was their guy. And when I mean their guy, he was coming off the board shortly after the Niners pick if he didn't go to the Niners. So all of that other stuff that people are screaming like, oh, it's too high, that is why we don't know what we don't know. He was catching a lot of heat leading into the draft. That's why the Niners made it a point to get him there, because they couldn't get him if they waited for another go-around.
So, Bucky, I think I just heard you say De'Zhaun Stribling was not a reach at 33.
No, he wasn't. I know he was well in play for a few different teams. There were a lot of people that were high on him that had targeted him as their guy. And without disclosing those teams, I can tell you that in the AFC, he was really high in the AFC South.
In the AFC South? Okay. So, by the way,
Robert Saleh coaches in the AFC South, I think.
By the way, I'd also love to what's your evaluation of Stribling?
Look, man, he's solid. So when the Niners have been at their most successful is when they've had guys that would catch and run playmakers, guys that when you put the ball in their hands in space, they made it happen. They also had a level of toughness and physicality where they could break plays, and they kind of embodied what the Niners want to be and who they portray themselves as. I've always felt like in the Shanahan era, they're the bullies on the block. If the Niners have their way, they want to beat you up. They kind of enjoy beating you up like that, and all 11 on the field participate in that. Stribling falls into that mold. He has speed, he has explosiveness, he has big playability. He is someone that I can envision Kyle Shanahan finding various ways to get him the ball. So I would expect him to play a major role in what they are doing going forward. Obviously, you don't draft someone at the top of the second round without having those plans. They have significant plans to do that. And I would say that he falls in line with how they utilize Deebo or how they viewed Deebo when they took him in the second round.
That's pretty exciting. I mean, that's a big vote of confidence from Bucky Brooks here on 95.7 The Game. They took a running back in the third round, which has everybody out here cringing because that usually means the player's not going to work out. But tell me about Kaelon Black and what you think he can do in the Shanahan offense.
Yeah, now, what's different about the Niners is they've always kind of marched to the beat of their own drum when it comes to running backs. They believe in what we call one-cut runners, meaning they're going to have them run the ball. They don't want a lot of creativity. They want you to get what it's designed for, and if you get anything beyond that, great. So he falls into that category. He's a terrific, what we call zone run runner, meaning he's going to press the point. If he finds the cutback lane, he's going to put his foot in the ground, and he's going to get north-south immediately. We have seen them have a bunch of runners that have tried to come through there and be that. But I will say this because people that get frustrated on the third-round running back, there's a difference between a first-rounder and a third-rounder. And if you don't want to invest in a first-rounder because there's certain talent that goes with that and the world has told you not to do it, then you have to be okay knowing that the third rounder that you take is not going to have all the things that the first rounder would have. So when you're looking at Christian McCaffrey, who was a top 10 pick, the third rounder is not going to have that. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to have your cake and look at it. You can't eat it. So if you take one in the third round, that's just what it's going to be. He's going to have some flaws that's going to prevent him from being maybe a high-end running back in most systems.
I've never understood the idea of having cake but not eating it. I don't know what's the point. Why would you bake a cake and not eat it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a shame. I don't know. It just makes sense to me.
Bucky Brooks is with us on Willard and Dibs. All right, mea culpa time for me, right? So that whole thing about you coming on our show and the Niner receiver core and running routes, and it was right after the. Yeah. Okay, so check this out. And here's what I want to ask you. I want your opinion on this. Weigh in, Bucky. So 2 years ago, plus a couple months, the 49ers are in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And their wide receiver core is Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, and Jennings. Here we are, about 25, 26 months later. Whole damn core's on the street.
It's so crazy.
Street, Bucky. They're sitting there for somebody to just, like, what does that say to you?
Well, I will say this. That has more to do with the individual players than the team. Brandon Aiyuk just crashed out. And I don't think anybody thought that would happen. The contract was a thing, but he never really came to grips with the contract, and it appeared that impacted him far beyond what we thought it would do for most players. Like, you have a negotiation, you want one thing, the team wants another, you meet in the middle, and then you go on. That's just kind of negotiation in the league. It appeared that he never got over not getting what he wanted from the contract, and that impacted him on and off the field, plus the injury. All that stuff just never made sense. Jennings is unique because he was a homegrown product. He was developed. He was a key contributor and all of that. But it appears he might have been a bit of a pain in the ass that last year. And despite the production, what we learned, talent would beget some tolerance until the talent isn't what we think it needs to be. And I think they got tired of tolerating whatever it was that it was bringing. And so that's why those two guys were going on. And then with Deebo, I just felt like it was a subtle decline in skills. And at some point, they wanted to move on for that based on the cost. And when they made the move to pay Aiyuk, they couldn't keep both of them. And so I think they felt like Deebo was a depreciating asset, which is why they let him go on. And they felt like they were going to replace him with Pearsall and some of the other guys that they brought through there.
You talk about depreciating asset, and they brought in Mike Evans from Tampa Bay. What do you think that he still has left to contribute to the Niners?
Well, look, I mean, he's an aging player, and so you got to manage the load on him. But I think, like what was said earlier about him and Christian Kirk, I think the one thing that the Niners wanted, I think they kind of was probably like a drama-free existence in that room. Man, let's go to work. Let's go to work every day. Let's run our routes. Let's catch balls. Let's be contributing parts of the team. And I know with both of those guys, Mike Evans and Christian Kirk, you're talking about A-plus pros, guys that will come to work every day. They're going to give you their best effort. They're going to make things happen when they're given the opportunity and do it. But in Mike Evans, I mean, you're talking about someone who put up 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons, who some are saying is like a gold jacket guy. He's going to give them what he's always given people, a bit of a vertical threat, a big body threat down in the red zone. But more importantly, he kind of fits that mold as a very physical presence on the perimeter.
Bucky Brooks with us, NFL Network, Willard and Dibs. All right, so I mean, especially the way you even started this conversation. You and I, we've all seen it all weekend long on social media. The 49er front office is just getting torched. Do they deserve it? Do you think they're bad at drafting?
I don't think so, because I know that team keeps going to the Super Bowl. So we can talk about like draft and all that other stuff. At the end of the day, what this comes down to is how does your team and how do your players play? And so we can talk about the many conversations about how they come in and this pick didn't work and that pick didn't work. I just know this. This team going into the last week of the season was the number one seed in the NFC. Number one seed. And we can talk about all the injuries. They somehow put it together. So, look, sometimes you may not draft the best, but there are a lot of later round picks that have had success. There's a lot of success that I'm seeing this team have with a 7th-round quarterback leading it. Kyle Shanahan is one of the premier coaches in this game. We can talk about all this. At the end of the day, it's a performance on the field. And I don't think you can really knock the performance because the Niners are always in the conversation. As a team builder, that's what you want your team to be. we always want to be in the conversation. Whether we're title contenders or not, we want to be close enough to be able to get there. And I think the last few years, we certainly have seen them come close enough to winning the Super Bowl that you feel good about the team and the team construction, even though, yeah, there's some flaws, but every team has some flaws and some missteps.
Yeah, and they got a big step to catch up to Seattle. When you look at the Seahawks and the Niners and the difference last year, what do the Niners need to do to kind of close that gap heading into 2026?
Oh, man, it's a new year. So whatever happened last year was last year. I will say this. The Seahawks are going to see how different it is being the hunted, where it's a different energy that they will face each and every week when you're the Super Bowl champ. The Niners have felt that heat because they've gone to the Super Bowl a few different times, and everyone uses you as a measuring stick. I would say for the Niners, the main thing is health is everything. And I'm sure they've done all the study to try and figure out why they're having so many injury issues. But the main thing, if I'm Shanahan, if I'm John Lynch, how can we get our team to the starting line and the finish line fairly intact? And if they do that, then they have a chance. But so often we're seeing the Niners have to play in the playoffs without their blue chip players. That would be the main thing. Because if this team has CMC and Kittle and their number one guys, Trent Williams and all of them healthy and available, they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. We've seen that. I think that's the main thing, but they got to get their young guys to develop consistently. And then I'm excited to see what Raheem Morris does with that defense. How does the defense evolve? You know, there are questions about that. How does this defense go to the next step? Robert Saleh did a great job in his 1 year back. Can Raheem pick up where it left off with a healthy Fred Warner, a healthy Nick Bosa? I mean, just think about the guys that we're talking about they played without. The fact that they've been what they've been without their blue chip players speaks volumes about who they are, how they coach, and the depth that they have on their team.
That's about enough of that. I want to see a tweet later tonight. Rip those 49ers, Bucky.
Oh, no. I would rather rip the Warriors than the Niners. I would rather rip those guys than the Niners. You know what I mean?
Do it on the way out. Do it. Do it. Mic drop it. Go ahead. What do you want to say, Bucky?
I don't have anything to say. I just know in the Bay Area, y'all hard on your team. I can only imagine what the poor little guy for the Giants is getting, the poor little college coach that is making his way trying to learn how to be a manager in the MLB. I can only imagine what the Giants fans are doing to my man as he tries to adapt and adjust to a different league.
We got to run this 4-time NBA ring head coach out of town first before we deal with him.
Right.
We got to get this championship coach out of town first, Bucky. We got to get him out of here.
I mean, we got to get him out of there because he couldn't figure out a way to get Jonathan Kuminga on the court. Some of the young guys don't work. Yeah, we just got to figure that out.
Thank you, Bucky. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you.
All right, man. Bucky Brooks,
he's
NFL
fun.
Network.
Yeah.
He's the best.
Yep.
It's a fun dude.
You guys go back, apparently.
Well, that was one of my 1,000 Fox Sports Radio co-hosts.
Yep.